On today's podcast, we're talking about what culture commitments we are making to the teams and organizations or relationships in our life. What are our commitments, and what is our plan to back them up with action?
Welcome back to the Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world.
Hey everyone, it's Jason, and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today, welcome in. So glad you are here. We're season 8, I think we're over 255 episodes or something like that now. So excited that this continues to grow and spread. And if you are new to the podcast, welcome in. Invite you to go back, listen to old episodes. We got some great past conversations with thought leaders from around the world that have joined me on this pod. If you just type in my name, Jason Barger, the Thermostat, any topic around leadership, culture, mindset, visioning, any of that kind of stuff, if you type it in, you're going to see all kinds of different topics that I think will resonate with you, and I hope you'll do that. If you are one of the OGs that have been with us from the very beginning, so glad this continues to add value to your life and your work. We're going to continue to create content, hopefully, that meets you where you are. And my commitment to all the listeners is that I want this to be a place for you to step back, for you to think, hopefully be filled with some good oxygen for your mind, your heart, and some time to just think about the temperature that you're trying to set in your life and your work. So glad you are here. Before we dive into today's topic, if you'll do me the quick, favor of rating the podcast 5 stars, leaving a authentic review in your own voice, whatever platform you're on, just, hey, rate it 5 stars. What is it about this podcast or this episode or a topic that you've liked? Why is it important? Have any redeeming value in the world? If you'll share that, that helps other people find it. And then, of course, every time you share an episode with your team at work or organization or friends or colleagues and say, hey, let's listen to this and talk about it, or hey, this is something you'll like, share it on social media. Those are obvious ways that help amplify the messages. So thanks for everybody who takes a moment to do that. Extremely grateful that this continues to grow and spread. Webster's dictionary would tell us that a commitment is, quote, an agreement or pledge to do something in the future. Or another way stated, it is the state or an instance of being obligated or emotionally impelled, an act of committing to a charge or a trust. We talk a lot about commitments in our world. We often want people to make commitments. We want to know what others are committed to, who are the people, who are the causes, and what will they truly be committed to. And in job settings, we want people who are committed to the mission or the future that we are trying to build. Commitments are everywhere, but not all are followed up with action. In fact, every person on the planet, myself included, has let a commitment down at some point. None of us are perfect. The strength of the commitments we make is dependent on whether both parties involved are aligned on exactly what the commitment is. Do we both see it and understand it the same way? Do we know what success might look like, or what fulfilling of the commitment might look like? What will it look like in action and behavior? So, on today's podcast, we're talking about what culture commitments we are making to the teams and organizations or relationships in our life. What are our commitments, and what is our plan to back them up with action? But before we dive into today's topic, let's take a quick break, pause, and we'll be right back.
Many teams and organizations right now are realizing that they need to do both. They need to engage the minds and hearts of their people in person, where everyone in the room can experience the energy of congregating together and find clarity for the road ahead. And they also need to continue to find ways to engage the minds and hearts of their people virtually, with those who are working remotely or at a distance. So if you are in the process of planning your next team meeting, company all-hands event, conference or culture summit, and are looking for support with a powerful keynote speech, facilitated team conversations that are the currency for change, or deeper development on leadership mindset and an intentional strategy for the culture you're trying to create, I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon.
All right, I love talking about this idea of culture commitments, and before we dive into that, I'll just throw a quick shout-out again to anybody who was a part of Thermostat Cultures Live just a few weeks ago, the event that I host, the hybrid event. Thanks to everybody. What a powerful day. You know, at that event, we talked with James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, about a lot of the things about habits and the things that either help us accomplish our commitments or the things that might get in the way of us fulfilling those commitments. And so I hope you go back and to dive into some episodes I've done around this idea of connecting habits but shout out to everybody who's part of that. What an amazing thing. The 8th time that we've had this event, and really, really powerful stuff coming out of that. My wife Amy and I just celebrated another anniversary recently. We've been married for 23 years and together even longer. And I can still remember standing in front of each other over 2 decades ago and making our first official commitment to each other on our wedding day. And, we were sincere that day in the commitment that we're making. I'm so glad. I'm grateful for, and I say thanks for that every single day. I'm so grateful that we made those commitments to each other 23 years ago. But that also isn't to say that just because we made the commitments to each other 23 years ago means that they will just magically stay in place, whatever the commitments that we made to each other. In fact, the reality is, we all know, is the commitments we made 23 years ago to each other are significant and are never to be forgotten, but they aren't actually the most important commitments at this point. They are certainly important. Again, but the most important commitments at this stage in our life are those that we are choosing to make for year 24. Not what we made 23 years ago. We may pull from the roots of those first commitments, but each year represents a new opportunity to kind of recommit to each other and to make sure we are clear on what commitments we are making to each other at this stage in our lives for year 24. So we dedicate time each year to get away for a day or two and talk about our vision for the year ahead. Businesses do this all the time. Certainly I help teams and organizations with strategic planning and thinking and visioning all the time. And the reality is we do that oftentimes, and it makes total sense. And many people would look at you like you're crazy if you didn't do that as a team and as a business, because how can we be aligned and going in the same direction if we don't really have a strategic vision and plan? We do that in our teams and organizations, but we don't always do that in our personal lives or with the relationships that are most significant to us. So Amy and I, we dedicate time each year to get away for a day or two and talk about our vision for the year ahead. What type of life, what type of marriage, what type of commitments are we willing to make to each other? And if we don't get clear on what we want and what commitments we're choosing to make, then we can't be surprised if we don't follow our commitments up with action. The commitments alone don't guarantee action, of course, but as you've heard me say, he or she who aims at nothing hits it every time. So it's a practice for us to pause and step back and say, so what are we aiming for next in our relationship? What are we aiming for in the life, the commitment, the relationship? What is it that we're aiming for next? The same thing is true in every team and organizational culture on the planet, of course. I just like to personalize it even with individual relationships because the same things are true. But of course, every single team and organizational culture on the planet, has an opportunity to recommit to, well, what is that, the next commitments, the next vision, the next actions that we're driving towards. So just because fill in the blank with whatever company that you admire or you think has a terrific company culture. There's companies all over the place that are winning best places to work awards every single year. So you fill in the blank with whatever company comes to your mind of that company that you admire or you think has a terrific, organizational or company culture. Just because that company or team that you're imagining, just because that company or team had a great culture last year, and they won the award, doesn't guarantee that it will stay that way for the year ahead. Again, we know culture is dynamic. It's always changing and always evolving. So just because they won the award for best place to work last year does not guarantee that that will continue in the year ahead. Just because the Boston Celtics or the Kansas City Chiefs or the Los Angeles Dodgers or the USA women's gymnastics team had a great culture last year, or whoever, again, comes to your mind is thinking about that, doesn't guarantee it will continue. The culture commitments we make each year begin to shape where we are aiming in the year ahead. So I often encourage teams and organizations, and again, as I'm painting the picture of, also relationships, to have dialogue about these culture commitments for the future. To step back each year and to gather and to ask the question of what is the type of team, what is the type of organization, what is the type of relationship we want to have in the year ahead, and try to describe it, articulate it. What would it look like and feel like to be that type of team or organization or to have that kind of relationship? How would we articulate it to each other? How do we hope to collaborate with each other in the year ahead? What values would describe how we want to show up for each other? And so describe, again, how, not just where are we trying to go and what we're trying to accomplish, but how do we want to interact and of how we collaborate together and what values do we want to drive us in that way? What are we grateful for in our culture? And what do you want more of? And so to be able to acknowledge on every team, every relationship, and every team and organization on the planet, part of it is we're moving so quickly that we need to take time to step back and appreciate and recognize and be grateful for all of that we appreciate about what's going on around us, and to name the things that we want to continue, and what are the opportunities we see we want more of. We want to help the culture expand. So what are those things? What are we grateful for in our culture? And what do we want more of in our culture? To ask the question of what has been an obstacle or harmful or has been harmful to our culture, and what do we want less of? No team is perfect, no organization is perfect, no relationship is perfect. And so name the areas that aren't bringing out the best in the culture and might need to shift. Again, you've heard me, if you think about past episodes when I was talking about the gratitude, I just did that recently of the practice of giving thanks. And I've also done, many podcasts around this idea of what is mentionable becomes more manageable. Until we're willing to mention those and have those courageous conversations of the things that might be obstacles or getting in our way, then we can't, address them until we're willing to talk about them. So name the areas that aren't bringing out the best in the culture and what might need to shift. And then lastly, the question of what commitments do you want to make to each other? What requests do you have of the people, in the relationship or on the team or part across the order? What requests do you have of them? And what requests do they have of you? What are the requests that we have of the other people in our culture? And name what you want to commit to. What am I going to commit to? What are you going to commit to? What are we going to commit to in the year ahead? And if we don't have clarity of what that commitment even is, and we can't describe it with each other, then it's probably not going to be followed up with action and behavior. And it doesn't mean that just because we can envision it and we can say it out loud and describe it, doesn't mean it's magically going to happen. But at least then we've got something to be able to aim for and to then back up with hopefully, action and behavior. The best cultures have clarity on what they are aiming for and then are able to use the language, use the commitments to check in with each other along the journey. Adjustments are always necessary and possible, of course, but the culture commitments become the dashboard for how you're aiming to travel on the journey together. So, as always, I'll leave you with some questions to ponder, and I'll run through those questions that I just asked a minute ago to just think about for you. What is the type of team or organization or relationship that you want to have in the year ahead? How do you hope to collaborate with each other in the year ahead? What values would describe how you want to show up for each other? What are you grateful for in your culture? And what do you want more of? What has been an obstacle or harmful to our culture? And what do you want less of? And what commitments do you want to make to each other? I hope today's episode got you thinking in some ways and hopefully breathed a little good oxygen into you, gave you some things to think about as you try to set the temperature in your life and your work that's intentional, that's purposeful, and helping to bring about the best in you and certainly the best in other people around you. We know that calibrating that thermostat takes intentionality and time, and the more we think about it, our internal temperature helps sets the temperature for the people around us and for our own action and behaviors and model it for the people around us. So I hope today was good for you. I hope you'll go back, check old episodes. Again, Google any topic you want, my name in the Thermostat podcast, and hopefully you'll come up with some good episodes that continue that dialogue for you. And just remember that the best leaders, teams, and cultures on the planet, they stimulate progress by recalibrating that thermostat together. So, step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.